You gotta understand, Kanan, that how people see you now is how they're gonna see you forever.
I want them to see me as me, not who my mother is.
Just watch your step. Get trusted.
If you want people to see you as you gotta let them know who you are. Famous last words.
Famous last words. I don't think Stefano was specifically talking about Famous, but we still have to ask the question. Where is Sean, Famous Figueroa? Has anybody seen Sean? He's nowhere to be seen in the trailer. He's nowhere to be seen in any of the teasers, promos, images, or anything that stars have put out just yet, which is why a lot of people are questioning, could he genuinely be one of the first big deaths quite early on in Season 4? That's going to be one of two topics of discussions in this particular breakdown. The second one being, why is Rock in tears? What's led to this moment from arguably one of the toughest we've ever seen in the Power universe? I mean, for Rock to be in tears, something big definitely has had to have happened. There are definitely going to be a few big moments coming in Season 4, so let's break it down, starting with Famous. Now, just as a very quick recap to bring everybody back up to speed, Famous was really struggling towards the beginning of Season 3. I think the guilt, the fact that he took Freddy's life towards the end of Season 2, him expressing it on the mic, it all started to take a big toll on him in Season 3. And the one person who he was opening up to was probably the one person who understood him the most. Famous is someone who just isn't built for the streets. Whenever he's had an opportunity, he's always wanted to write music, get in the studio and try and make a career in the music industry. Towards the end of Season 3, he was actually put in contact with the big shot who owned a record label. Shirley used the contacts and had Mr. Gelford come over to talk to Famous and Lou. Unfortunately, at that point, Lou was facing his own battle and on his way to rehab. And then we saw Famous being picked up by the feds after his mum handed in the gun Famous stupidly stashed in his cupboard. That was the gun that was linked to Freddy's murder. Now, Detective Garcia has Famous right where he wants him. Famous could be looking at some major time, but Garcia and Captain Baptiste, they're not worried about small fish like Famous. I don't think they even bothered about Freddy's death one bit. To them, they're probably thinking, great, that's one less street thug we have to deal with. But for them, they've got eyes on bigger. They've got eyes on the Thomases. They've got eyes on the Italians. Or at least they did towards the beginning of Season 3. They want bigger than Famous. So could they force him to work undercover, snitch, get information on the Thomases, knowing that he is close to Kanan Stark? And could that lead to a big death at the beginning of Season 4? We know how Power love a big death early on, especially around the episode 2 mark. Around the episode 2 mark, there's always a game-changing death. Based on history in terms of just raising Kanan itself, there was D-Wiz in Season 1, which wasn't exactly a big character as such. The show was fairly new and fairly fresh, but this was a big death in the sense it set off a chain reaction. This was one of Kanan's best friends, someone who had his back during the whole Buck 20 situation at the beginning of Season 1, his first real loss, a hit called by Rock, and the impact that it had on Lou. He's wanted out the game ever since he pulled the trigger, and I also feel the story will end up coming full circle in terms of D-Wiz's brother's introduction, eventually. But there was D-Wiz in Season 1, Episode 2, Scrappy in 202, and at the end of Season 3, Episode 2, there was also Sal Buscemi. Towards the end of 301, there was also Detective Shannon Beck, so they gave us kind of 2 in 2 episodes. So we do know the writers aren't afraid to shake things up early on. These early deaths do change the game for the season going forward. And what better way than to rock Kanan's world than by the death of his best friend Famous? Now we do also have to look at the other perspective. We can't ignore the fact that he might not die. What if he just skips town and leaves? What if he just decides, I'm getting out of New York, I'm going to stay under the radar with potentially his sister Jessica in LA, because Jessica is set to return. Over the Power Off season, I have been keeping close tabs on social media, and I've got a lot of interview quotes, snapshots and scenes that I'm just waiting to show you guys at the right moment, when it's the appropriate episode or storyline, and this is one of them. Jessica Figueroa will definitely be returning, so you have to ask the question, why now? Why is Jess returning all of a sudden in Season 4 when she left way back in early in Season 2? Has something happened to Famous? Is she here to pick him up and leave? Is she here to help him with law enforcement? So Jess returning and this whole situation around Famous, I don't think it's going to be straightforward as we think. There are definitely going to be a few twists and turns when it comes to Famous, especially when you go back to the point of how Kanan named his son after Famous. Something significant has had to have happened with Famous for Kanan to name his son after his best friend. It also makes me lean towards him not actually being a snitch, because I highly doubt Kanan would name his son after a snitch. I also think Famous does know the consequences of talking in the streets. He may not be built for the life, but he certainly does know the rules, or at least I hope he does. He is one of the fan favourites, and I'd hate for them to turn him into a snitch, so I don't think he will. But something significant has to happen to Famous for Kanan to name his son Sean, whether it's early in season 4, whether it's later on in season 4, or potentially even in season 5. So those are my kind of thoughts, opinions, and predictions around Famous. I do think he is in danger. I think an early death can't be ruled out, but I also feel like we can't take the other option off the table either, of Jessica coming back and helping him, giving him one last lifeline out of New York. Or could she potentially be back for a funeral? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. But moving on to the situation with Rock. Now, who the hell has managed to make Rock shed some tears? I put a post up on X not too long ago, and I said, on Rock crying, to make this Queen Pin cry, shed some tears, one of the toughest we've ever seen in the Power universe, it does take some doing. This moment has to have cut her deep. Big moments are coming in season 4, TikTok. And this is someone who really is ice cold. She makes decisions and deals with the consequences later on. She takes shit on the chin and moves on, whether the decision is right, wrong, or difficult to make. We've even referenced a few earlier with Scrappy and D-Wiz, and those are just to name 2. I believe Defcon and High Post, she definitely had something to do with their deaths as well. That's what she does. She knows how to be tough in the cutthroat life that they live. If she sits and dwells on every single mistake, you end up like Lou. If you talk about your feelings, what good is it going to do for someone like Rock? So I do wonder who has Rock crying in this particular scene, why and how. Could it genuinely be one of the death of the Thomases? There's Lou, Marvin, and also Joyce Thomas. Could it genuinely be set up for raising Kanan's first major death for one of the Thomases? Now what I would say is, we do have to err on the side of caution when it comes to kind of these trailers and try not to jump to too many conclusions, because a 2-second scene without context is very difficult to dissect or figure out what happened. What's led to this moment of Rock crying? They want us to question this moment of Rock crying. It's exactly what they want. They want us confused. They want us asking these questions. They want an air of mystery, us making these predictions, which would probably end up being wrong. That's what they want. So as always, we are going to look at a different perspective. Could it actually be Rock finally breaking and dealing with her trauma? Could Rock's past finally be catching up with her, where a mistake or a moment has made her realise what she's done? Or could it genuinely be a Thomas death? Could it involve Famous? Has she had to make another decision like D-Wiz? And has she had to do it herself? I don't think many, including myself, will even be able to predict it. Maybe a bit later on as the season goes on, we might be able to get the clues and think, I see where they're going with this particular storyline. They're leaving breadcrumbs for Lou's downfall, something we're definitely going to discuss in a lot more detail in my Mega Predictions breakdown. I've got a big section on Lou. But as the season goes on, we might be able to think, I can see they're kind of dropping the breadcrumbs for Lou. They're dropping the breadcrumbs for Marvin's downfall, or they're leaving the clues for potentially Joyce Thomas. Then we might be able to paint a better picture of this particular scene. But until then, it really is difficult to know for sure. But whatever has got Rock crying, whatever it is, whether it's the death of a Thomas, whether it's her having to make another difficult decision like D-Wiz, whether it's her revisiting her trauma, finally at breaking point for whatever reason, this moment has cut Rock deep, and I really can't wait to see what's put her in this position. So those are just a few extra thoughts and perspectives to this scene with Rock. With that being said, I still have my Mega Predictions breakdown coming, so I guess this is kind of just part 1. I'll hopefully drop part 2 at some point in the next week or so. It really is a long, well thought out, highly in-depth predictions and death predictions breakdown. But let me know your thoughts on these 2 particular topics. Is Famous out of here, or is there a twist to the tale? I just don't think it's going to be as straightforward based on Jessica's return, but let's wait and see. And why do you think Rock's crying? Who's got this Queen Pin in tears? Drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.